Hi, everybody. The big takeaways from Chapter 7 on cognition and intelligence are these. The last chapter on memory, and then this one on cognition and intelligence, cover a theme of what we know as adults. Chapter 6 on memory discussed the mechanics of how we kind of collect life experiences and store them for later use. This Chapter 7 on cognition and intelligence now talks about how we use that information in our daily lives to figure out the world, to make decisions, and to solve problems in our complex interactions with people and environments that we encounter. So, first big takeaway, all thinking and decision-making uses concepts and heuristics. We organize information about the world by fitting it all into concepts that these mental categories used to represent a group of objects or people or events that share common characteristics or attributes. Now, heuristics are often the bases for what a community considers to be common sense, but also stereotypes, that is, a common understanding of people and places and what to expect. That's what a stereotype is. By consensus, citizens believe we know a particular experience or a particular type of person, even if by relatively few encounters with it, and then by consensus, we elevate that knowledge to near fact, and sometimes we just call it common sense. Stereotypes about particular social groups are heuristics that have become widely known in a local community. An example of a stereotyped social group might be, let's say, politicians, who are widely thought of as behaving a certain way, speaking a certain way, looking a certain way. Stereotypes are created when most people have had a similar experience with even a small portion of members of a particular social group. So, know that all thinking and decision-making uses concepts and heuristics. Takeaway number 2, intelligence is multidimensional and very often context-specific. Intelligence is one of the oldest and most studied, most well-developed ideas in psychology. The modern view of educators and educational psychologists says that intelligence is multidimensional and context-specific. So in this chapter, Gardner offers a really provocative and interesting point of view that there exist these multiple intelligences, right? Some that are obvious and valued in university schooling, such as verbal intelligence and logical mathematical thinking, and some that can make a person quite successful in specific contexts, their musical ability, their sports ability. Sternberg, similarly, in this chapter, states that students with different intellectual strengths and weaknesses perform differently in school because schools favor intelligence in the forms of analytical reasoning and abstract thinking. It is interesting that Sternberg is one of the first psychologists to ever value creativity as a type of intelligence that can contribute to success in certain contexts. He's right. He also highlighted practical street smarts, that is, practical know-how in real life and daily contexts. So the point is, Gardner and Sternberg's theories are correct. Intelligence is multidimensional and often context-specific. And lastly, the third big takeaway from this chapter, how intelligence tests work. Intelligence tests create a series of tasks that require the demonstration of intelligence. Intelligence tests then produce a score, an IQ score. You may have heard of that before. And those tools are only administered by trained school psychologists or clinical psychologists. In this chapter, the Wechsler scale for adults and for children provides an overall IQ score with items also grouped according to 11 subcategories called verbal scales and performance scales. Note here that intelligence is measured as multidimensional. So, okay, in summary, in the big takeaways from Chapter 7 on cognition and intelligence are these. Number 1, all thinking and decision-making uses concepts and heuristics. Stereotypes about particular social groups, including negative stereotypes, are just heuristics. Number 2, intelligence is multidimensional and often context-specific. And number 3, intelligence tests produce an IQ score, but these are tools that should only be administered by trained school psychologists or clinical psychologists. Those are the big takeaways from Chapter 7 on cognition and intelligence. Thanks for listening.